Purchasing Managers Index expands in August. Loan defaulters to lose deposits in other banks, plus CBN introduces clause on credit risk, and US is jacking up visa fees for Nigerians. The program is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital, on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Amina Nujaim. Welcome to the program. The Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index PMI stood at 57.9 index points for the month of August, indicating an expansion in the manufacturing sector for the 29th consecutive month. The index grew at a faster rate when compared to the index in July. The Central Bank of Nigeria PMI report for August 2019 says of the 14 subsectors surveyed, 13 reported growth. The report showed that at 58.7 points, the production level index for manufacturing sector grew for the 30th consecutive month in August 2019. The index indicated a slower growth in the current month when compared to its level in July 2019. In all, 8 of the 14 manufacturing subsectors recorded increased production level. 3 remained unchanged, while 3 recorded decline. A joint study by the Africa Development Bank and the Global Financial Integrity found that $30.4 billion flowed out of Africa annually between 2000 and 2009, mostly in the form of illicit financial flows. Financial experts say this is worrisome and suggest partnership with government to stem the tide. Director General of Nigeria Financial Intelligence Agency, Modibo Haman Tukur, stated this at the Human and Environmental Development Agenda 2019 Sub-Regional Conference on Illicit Financial Flows and Asset Recovery in Abuja.
Cooperated with some of the banks and then reverse some of the transactions back to the United States. So, I would only want other countries to imitate Nigeria.
It's important to have units that you can attract the best, who can then take on these companies and discuss issues of transfer pricing equal to equal.
Nigeria was described as the leading financial institution in West Africa because almost all banks are owned by Nigerians who are influencing the financial operations of North and Central Africa. And the Central Bank of Nigeria has set a new credit risk potential clause that would require the bank verification number BVN of all prospective borrowers in order to improve consumer lending and revitalize the economy. Deputy Governor Financial System Stability of the CBN, Aisha Ahmed, stated this at the Bankers Committee meeting in Lagos.
The Central Bank of Nigeria at the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting emphasized on the need to use expanded credit to the macro, small and medium enterprise and retail sectors to revitalize the economy. Towards improving consumer credit, the Apex Bank, through a pronouncement to deposit money banks to grow the loan deposit ratio to 60% by 30th of September this year from the 57% the industry operates, is targeted at encouraging banks to lend.
They will look at how well the banks have done. They will apply a multiple of 1.5% to consumer type loans, mortgage type loans, towards that calculation. And the whole idea is to stimulate the economy, get GDP growth.
In addressing the challenges confronting deposit money banks from not lending to the real sector, the Apex Bank, through the clause, will introduce the requirement of bank verification number and signing of agreements by the customers not to default.
Basically, it will contain the BVN details of the customers. It will be a commitment by the customer that in taking the loan, or a covenant, that in taking the loan you agree and promise to repay the loan, and that you also agree that should you default on the loan, that the total amount of assets or the total amount of deposits you have across the industry, the banking industry, would be applied towards repaying the loan.
The Central Bank of Nigeria focus at revitalizing the mortgage sector has led to the introduction of Mortgage Interest Drawback Fund, which is aimed at solving the high cost of mortgages. In Lagos, Abolade Salami.
Now, the total amount of non-performing loans of Nigerian banks for 2018 alone hit 1.79 trillion naira, and just recently the power sector recorded 100 billion naira worth of bad loans. With these alarming figures, we have an economic expert and chairman, Human Environmental Development Agenda, a group that covers human rights, stability, accountability, and anti-corruption, Olalewaju Suraju. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Going by that background report, the Bankers Committee have decided that if you default on loans, non-performing loans technically, when you call it that, you forfeit all funds in your accounts in other banks. No. Is it a step in the right direction?
Oh yes, it is. I mean, we've had what just came out from AMCON recently showing how few set of people are actually owing what they want to add, ultimately thinking would amount to bad loans for the bank, running into trillions of naira. So we're talking about over 5 trillion naira. The 5 trillion naira, that is almost the national budget of the country. And the irony of it is the fact that quite a number of these loan defaulters have private jets, you know, several other companies. They have monies in several other banks, and even some of the loans are transferred to some other banks where they're still active and running.
What are the chances of recovering these loans?
Oh yeah, once they're still within the system, it is very much possible. It is important that there would be a timeline for payments. There will be also sometimes collateral are also involved, but you have some bad legs in the banking sector who are also conspiring with some of the defaulters to get away with these loans and not repaying them. But the fact that it is not possible anywhere for you to be owing, and I'm sure even ordinary landlords won't accept that. So you can't be owing money here and defaulting, and then you're having excess elsewhere. It is just natural, and I think the central bank is just waking up to its own responsibilities by making sure that people are not taking away what belongs to everybody for personal gain and also to the detriment of the
now with these developments, what do you expect to get as feedback from both the borrowers and the commercial banks where people would be seeking loans?
No, it is not only just about the borrowers and the commercial banks. It's about the people. This money is not what belongs to the bank. It is the money of the investors. It is the national. So when the bad debts were bought by AMCON and stuff, they were not using money of the bank or money of they're using the money of you and I. So it is about you and I also getting into the fray and making sure that depositors' money and investment of investors are protected in the banking sector. And for that reason, we must hold not only the CBN also responsible and accountable, where we now see bad loans, you know, evolving to the tune of trillions of naira, and also the banking officials that are also connected with the loans. The anti-corruption agencies also needs to step up to that and ensure that the laws are complied and guidelines are complied.
Something comes to mind with this huge amount of non-performing loans. Could that be described as the state of the financial sector in Nigeria?
No, really. The financial sector in the country is not really bad. And the unfortunate thing, again, is quite a number of the foreign investors. We've seen situations where they don't even bring any money in to come and invest. They also borrow and take money within the system. Unfortunately, but they take the profit out of here as if the money for the investment or the source of investment were from some foreign fundings and the rest of it. And you saw that recently when one of the telecommunication company was sanctioned by the CBN and the Office of the Attorney General. So there's a lot of money within the system that can assist and support not only the medium and medium scale enterprise, but can also support huge financial investment. But people are just not investing in businesses that will attract not only patronage, but have the capacity for high yielding. And you can see some of the things that are happening in the agricultural sector for that instance. For every importation that we do, it's a potential investment opportunity for local production.
Talking about local production, the critical sectors, for instance, recently we had the creative industry receiving attention from the Central Bank of Nigeria and healthcare, for instance. Would there be some kind of disadvantage now? Would it be improved or would it not be improved? What would the picture be with this situation on ground now?
Yeah, they would realize that Nigeria should be one of the countries with the highest rate of medical tourism across the world. So there's a whole lot of movement from here, and many of the businesses and countries are also taking advantage of this, where for almost every ailment, even where especially the affluent in the society twist their wrists, they go abroad to even go and do a checkup. And so it already tells you and everybody that there's a huge market that needs to be tapped locally.
Yeah, talking about the huge market for the creative industry. We recently have CBN supporting the creative industry with a huge number of non-performing loans. Do we see the creative industry receiving the desired amount of funds to support it?
Well, yeah, so there's a need for monitoring. So for every policy in our system where corruption is almost part of everyday life of both private and public life, for every initiative and policy, there must be the monitoring, that very strong monitoring mechanism that would go with it. And there must be that evaluation of the impact to the extent that it must be dynamic, that where there's a need for some amendment and adjustment, that is critically addressed and responded to. And there must also be sanction for defaulters. This is where we have issues, and that is why many of us will say the problem of the country is not corruption generally. It is actually about impunity, because people will have the mentality that they can get away with criminal activities.
What kind of sanctions do you have in mind?
Oh, the laws, we have the Penal Code, the EFCC Act, the ICPC Act, the Constitution, the Criminal Code. There are lots of sanctions that are there for defaulters in different forms and in different stages. And that needs to be enforced to the letter. The law is no respecter of anybody, and the rule of law would be paramount. So it is not going to be sufficient for people when they are actually suspected or even invited for interrogation for some of the infractions. They quickly run to court and get injunction in court to say, don't investigate me or don't even arrest me. The law is not in any way meant to protect suspects of criminal activities.
Things like BVN and tax identification number, do they come into play to check such defaulters?
We missed it here. That in some of the claims, they would tell you 3 things or 2 things are sacrosanct. One is life and death. The second one is tax. So you can't even joke with it here, because our elites wants to get away with their tax responsibilities. Many times they don't bother the ordinary people or the low class with paying taxes because they also don't want to be questioned about their tax record. But the tax identification number must be able to show. It's insufficient for people to say, I own 1 billion naira in terms of asset, worth of asset, or I'm the richest man in Africa. So if you're the richest man in Africa, we must be able to see a tax regime and payments that commensurate with the level of your wealth. And that you don't say. There's a huge disparity between the tax record of the rich in the society, and the BVN is very, very crucial. It's been assisting many of the law enforcement, especially anti-corruption agencies, to actually see those who will hide money easily outside their immediate account. And the bank are also culpable. Quite a number of the banks open what they call special account for some of these high-profile guys, hiding away from the system. But once those are connected,
so all those hidden monies using the BVN could be traced.
Yeah, precisely. So once they are connected with your BVN, there's no amount of where you can hide it. Once it's connected with your BVN, they can easily draw it from wherever bank that it is domiciled.
Okay, now still talking about lending. Before someone approaches a bank to say he wants to borrow money, collateral is normally required. Do you see the alternative, for instance, of credit rating as an alternative to collateral?
Oh yes, it is not entirely an alternative, but it can also complement. So where you have a collateral that is possibly not up to the amount of money that is required for your business idea, your credit rating can be considered. And that is why in many of the developed countries, they don't joke with their credit ratings, because it goes a long way, even in terms of ordinary hire purchase. So you want to buy a car.
Does Nigeria use credit rating?
No, Nigeria has not been using credit rating. I mean, it's just, I can tell you, many of the so-called defaulters of the bad loans have records of defaulting in several, bad record of loans, and they just move to the next one. So they have a horrible back record with this bank. They go to the next one, get some money from there, offset this one, and then move on. So they kind of move. So the credit rating is not really been any form of consideration.
Can it be implemented in Nigeria?
It really can be implemented, and the part of the BVN, the tax record, can also be a very crucial ingredient for achieving that.
Okay. Now, moving away slightly, the committee says that deposit money bank should maintain the 60% from the 57% ratio from borrowing and deposits by September 30th, 2019. Do you see this happening?
Yeah, there's nothing really that is not possible. And one of the things that I assume, and I think it's a practice, it's not just a decision taken by just some few officials of the CBN. It is the bankers committee. So heads of the banks are also there. So it's obvious that it is something that is possible. It is something that is achievable and attainable. It is just that there's not really been that either commitment or the will on the part of the implementers to actually take it forward. So I can see it really being possible. The timing, I'm not too sure, but once the will is there, it is very much possible to attain the 60%.
Larewaju Surajo, an economic expert. It was a lively discussion, and I look forward to more discussions like this.
Anytime. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure having you on the program. No. Ongoing discussions on how to decongest the Lagos port and increase operational capacity of others, especially the eastern ports, is receiving a positive response as players in the sector have identified collaborative initiative as key to getting the Port Harcourt Seaport operational and at full capacity within the shortest possible time. Osinachi Abraham has details of this.
Sea transportation is one key area Nigerians say authorities must prioritize in order to boost the nation's economy and create jobs in line with President Muhammadu Buhari's Next Level project.
They started the situation in the various ports in the eastern part of Nigeria. We've done that of Lagos, the western ports before, and we are having an on-the-spot assessment of situations on ground here in the eastern ports. For example, on the tugboat that is very much discussed earlier today, the contract has been awarded to repair the damaged one, and the pilot quarters as well, you see it's been repaired.
Some of the equipments are needed to be used for the operations. In fact, we have been told in the next 2-3 weeks they are arriving from abroad. They have placed order, manufactured, and we're expecting them.
Stakeholders are of the view that the country's internally generated revenue will rise if Port Harcourt's dockyard is rehabilitated and maximized optimally to address the many challenges facing the smooth operations in the facility, since the country depends mostly on import and export products for her needs.
We are happy, that we're appreciated for our efforts, our contributions, to port development. But I think that means, we have to do more.
Explain to them our achievements and challenges. And part of the challenges we have is that of insecurity along the water channels, lack of pilot quota for pilots to use, lack of tugboats.
These challenges necessitated the facility tour and stakeholders interactive meeting put together by the Nigerian Ports Authority to harness the potentials.
You are still watching Business Experts, and it's time to check out prices of commodities on the local and global markets. The Nigerian stock market midweek inched upward to advance marginally. The OSHA index at the close of the day session gained 0.02% to end at 27,607.02 basis points. 130 million is the volume of trade for the day, where volume stood at 3.006 billion naira in 2,866 deals. Transco, MTN, Nigeria and WAPCO jointly accounted for the most active stocks. And global markets. European stocks lower on no-deal Brexit fears. Here's a summary of market activity.
Stocks in Africa began trading mostly positive on the third trading day of week. Ghana JSE Composite, Tunisia Tune Index and Namibia Overall Index posted gains, while South Africa JSE Africa, Top 40 and Nairobi All Share were negative. European stocks traded lower after the US yield curve inversion deepened to levels not seen since 2007, reigniting fears of an impending recession. Stocks were mixed following the overnight invasion of a closely watched US Treasury yield curve to its worst level in more than a decade. Shanghai Composite declined Hang Seng Index lower as of its final hour of trading. Futures in the US market were set to open slightly higher. Dow futures rose 65 points, indicating a positive open of more than 43 points. Futures on the S&P and Nasdaq were both marginally higher.
The sterling fell Wednesday morning after UK Prime Minister said he would schedule the formal reopening of Parliament on October 14th. How is the pound sterling and other international currencies exchanging against the naira? And that's a wrap on this edition of Business Express. Don't forget you can access all previous episodes on YouTube, and you can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is NTA News Now. Don't forget the hashtag BizX. We value your feedback. Keep them coming. I am Amina Nujaim. We'll see you on Friday.